This malware project had 88,000 lines of code, 3 engineering teams, and a 30-week plan. Except the teams may never have existed, and the working version appeared in about a week.
In December 2025, researchers at Check Point found a cluster of unusual Linux malware samples. And right off the bat, they knew they were looking at something different. They called it VoidLink. Now, this wasn't just some messy, thrown-together script that someone hastily copied from a couple of online tutorials. Not at all. We're talking about a highly sophisticated, completely modular command and control framework engineered from the ground up for modern cloud infrastructure. It was actually built to seamlessly recognize major cloud environments. Think AWS, Google Cloud, Azure. It could even figure out when it was trapped inside containerized setups like Docker or Kubernetes. And once it got its foot in the door, it was designed to quietly hunt for credentials, unpack dozens of post-exploitation modules, and, this is the crazy part, dynamically shift its behavior the second it spotted security monitoring software. So, to put that in plain English, VoidLink acted less like a single malicious program and way more like an entire adaptable cloud toolbox. It was a framework custom-built to quietly embed itself deep inside the complex corporate networks that pretty much run every modern company today. Okay, let's dive into this because when Check Point's team started digging deeper, they found what looked like a massive, highly organized development operation. The leaked internal materials for this project were wild. I mean, we're talking beautifully detailed architecture documents, super strict coding standards, full-on sprint schedules, and really robust testing plans. In fact, if you looked at the documentation, the workload was cleanly chopped up among 3 distinct engineering groups. You had a core team, an arsenal team, and a backend team. Honestly, it looked exactly like the work of a very well-resourced, highly organized criminal syndicate. Their documentation was pristine. You almost get the feeling somebody was in charge of scheduling their weekly Agile retrospectives. But here is where the researchers hit a massive anomaly. Something literally just did not add up. The project docs mapped out this roadmap of, roughly 20 to 30 weeks of engineering sprints, but the actual framework, it was evolving way, way faster than that. The earliest planning documents they recovered were dated around November 27th, but by December 4th, literally just days later, test artifacts proved the framework was already fully functional. By that December 4th date, the project had absolutely exploded. It had grown past 88,000 lines of code. A compiled working version had even made its way onto public malware scanning databases like VirusTotal. So somehow, months of highly structured, meticulously planned engineering had happened in just a few days. Well, the truth behind that totally impossible timeline is fascinating. Those 3 distinct engineering teams, they likely never existed as actual human beings. Instead, all the evidence points to them being virtual roles created entirely inside an AI workflow, using a technique called spec-driven development. The leaked materials actually included prompts and instructions spit out by an AI-centric development environment. Basically, the workflow went like this. The human developers started with a super thin code skeleton and a few broad requirements. From there, the AI took the wheel, translating those basic requirements into a strict architecture, detailed coding rules, sprint plans for its virtual teams, and finally, the actual code implementation. Specifically, they were using tools like Tray Solo, which is an AI assistant embedded right into a development environment to orchestrate really complex coding projects. And to prove this wasn't just a theory, Check Point actually went in and reproduced parts of this exact workflow. They fed the AI the same documented rules and sprint plans they found, and watched the model spit out code that looked incredibly similar to the real VoidLink project, both in structure and content. So, the researchers came to a careful but pretty blunt assessment. VoidLink was authored almost entirely by AI, operating under the direction of just one highly capable human supervisor. The illusion was 3 dedicated human teams, but the reality, it was just one person using artificial intelligence as a massive force multiplier. Now, here is a really crucial point we need to make. Capability does not automatically equal deployment. Check Point made it very clear that they found 0 evidence of VoidLink actually infecting any real-world victims at the time they published their initial report. Yes, the framework was built and tested, but there's absolutely no proof it was ever actively unleashed on real targets. It's also super important to separate the Hollywood myth from reality here. This was absolutely not some rogue machine waking up and independently deciding to code malware. No Skynet here. The evidence strictly points to a technically experienced human driving the whole thing, providing the goals, the starting material, the strict specs, and the critical judgment needed to actually integrate and test the final system. And honestly, the result brilliantly illustrates just how sophisticated that human-AI collaboration can be. VoidLink was incredibly advanced. As we touched on earlier, it could evaluate its security environment and tweak its behavior on the fly. If the network monitoring looked aggressive, it would purposely slow its operations down to fly under the radar. It packed memory plugins, multiple communication channels, and even advanced anti-forensic tools built specifically to scrub its own tracks. So what does this all mean? If there were no real-world victims, why should we even care? Well, because the real, kind of uncomfortable shift here isn't about attackers getting more creative. Threat actors have been writing clever malware for decades. A fundamental game changer we're looking at here is entirely economic. Think about it. Traditionally, building complex offensive tools required a lot of scarce expertise, multiple specialists, heavy coordination, and a ton of time and money. AI lets that expertise stretch incredibly far. One single experienced developer can now basically ask a machine to act like several fast-paced junior engineering teams. Teams that don't sleep, don't complain about JIRA tickets, and can crank out 88,000 lines of code before you've even booked a meeting room. And meanwhile, the defenders on the other side, they inherit a massive scaling problem as the attacker's development cycle practically shrinks to zero. This is the reality of asymmetric warfare moving forward. The whole balance of time and resources is fundamentally shifting. And hey, if this is the kind of overlooked technical shift you want explained, relying on actual evidence without all the usual panic and hype, make sure to subscribe. There are more than enough real, fascinating details in this explainer. We definitely don't need to manufacture scarier ones. But as we wrap up this explainer, there's a really fascinating bit of irony hiding in the evidence. The AI's incredibly thorough documentation, the timestamps, the sprint schedules, the coding rules, that was the exact operational security failure that exposed the entire project. The very same machine that put the malware's construction into hyperdrive also meticulously documented every single step, leaving a massive trail of receipts. Which leads to the lingering question Check Point ended their investigation with. And it sets up a pretty chilling reality. Researchers were only able to reconstruct this entire story because the developer made an OPSEC mistake and left their internal materials exposed on a server. So how many other sophisticated frameworks out there were built exactly this way, just without leaving the receipts behind? VoidLink isn't proof of some autonomous cyber war. It's evidence of something much quieter. The minimum viable team for building serious offensive software has officially shrunk to just one human supervising several artificial ones. The project plan still said 3 teams. It just did not say they had to be human.